The news is not great. I mean, it's bull. They're after your boy. They're up my.
Is the left-wing streamer Hasan Piker really going to prison? Don't get ahead of yourself. Welcome back to the show, guys. And we're going to do something strange that if you're a regular viewer of my content or listener to my show, you are going to be surprised. But I'm going to kind of, tentatively at least, defend Hasan Piker. Now, you know, if you've been here before, I am not a fan of this guy. He is a radical leftist, far left, Marxist, unhinged streamer who says all sorts of crazy stuff I don't believe in and don't agree with, and I actually think is incendiary and dangerous, some of his rhetoric, like when he screams about how Republican senators should be murdered and that kind of thing, or like, let the blood of landlords run in the streets. I genuinely think he is a deeply harmful and radical figure. At the same time, though, I believe in free speech. I believe in not prosecuting your political opponents or cracking down on them in a partisan way. So I was always going to analyze what's happening to Hasan Piker and others like him right now, not based on my personal feelings about him, but instead based on the facts of the situation. And at least so far, I'm not in fact seeing facts that would justify a criminal charge against Hasan Piker relating to his Cuba trip that we talked about on the show at the time, but he went a little while ago with a convoy of other leftists on a pretty sympathetic trip to Cuba, which Cuba, of course, has a communist authoritarian government, but it's also been the subject of a fuel blockade by the United States that is attempting to pressure the regime, but has led to obviously a humanitarian crisis on the island. So they went there to do a sympathetic convoy. Like Hasan made a documentary, other journalists, like left-wing journalists, went there and did interviews. And now apparently they are being subpoenaed or have been subpoenaed. We'll get into the details there because it's not all adding up, according to a bombshell report from Fox News. Here that is.
Speaking of controversial figures on the far left, anti-American commentator Hasan Piker is now in the Fed's crosshairs. He was subpoenaed over trips to communist Cuba. Investigators are looking into possible sanctions violations, seeking records on money and communications tied to those trips. And Piker's responded. Every centrist blue MAGA who celebrates these subpoenas is a moron. They think you're all communists. They're coming for you, too. Kamala and Hillary lost Trump because they tried to present themselves as moderate establishment candidates. It was the Dem Party's failure that gave us Trump twice. But then Piker may have let the real story slip. During a recent stream, he suggested the true target of the investigation is American Marxist tech tycoon Neville Roy Singham. Quote, I think that ultimately the target is probably Singham and his operation from PSL to Answer Coalition to Code Pink, like anything that he has ever financed. Not sure how much money he has now, but he's been a funding vehicle for a lot of political movements in the country, like a lot of activism, and they hate that, so they're trying to jam them up.
Now, we're going to get into more of the details about the potential or supposed subpoenas or criminal investigation into Hasan Piker over this trip, but I will say he does appear to be at least somewhat rattled by this. Watch this clip of Piker reacting on his stream.
And I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's not great. The news is not great. Okay. I mean, it's bull, but still not great that, you know, they're after your boy. They're up my.
Okay, we're going to dig into the details of what exactly Hasan Piker is accused of doing wrong, and I'm going to explain why, to me at least, I'm not really seeing any evidence that he's crossed the criminal line just yet. But first, do make sure to subscribe, do hit the like button, do comment with your thoughts as we go along. Here is the Fox News article that broke this bombshell story a few days ago. Feds subpoena Hasan Piker, Medea Benjamin over Cuba trips. Investigation, part of broader dragnet involving as many as 40 American citizens who joined Marxist convoy to Havana. Now, here from the article, we get to one of the main allegations against Hasan Piker. According to public statements, it's believed that delegation members stayed at a hotel the U.S. State Department has put on a, quote, Cuba restricted list as businesses directly tied to the communist government of Cuba, which is designated as a state sponsor of terrorism. So here's where this gets interesting. So what this is talking about is the clear sanctions that the United States has against Cuba. One of the things they do is they heavily limit and restrict travel to Cuba. You can go if you get there's a general license that you can use for humanitarian visits or journalistic visits, which is what this convoy did. But there are severe restrictions on what businesses or hotels you can patronize in Cuba, because many of them are put on a list essentially saying they're owned or indirectly tied to the Cuban government, and you cannot stay there or you're funneling money to this sanctioned government, which is obviously not allowed. That's the point of these regulations. Now, Hasan Piker and Ryan Grimm and other people who went on this Cuba trip have maintained from the beginning that they took steps to ensure they did not violate sanctions. They didn't want to end up in prison for many years, which, I mean, there are potential significant criminal charges at play here. And according to the New York Times, from the time of their trip, they stayed at a Spanish-owned hotel, Iberostar Marqués de la Torre, which, it's important to note, is not on the sanctions list. So they've said from the beginning that they stayed at a hotel that they are allowed to stay at. There have been like tweets and rumors that they stayed somewhere else, but it was reported they stayed at these Spanish-owned hotels that are not on the sanctions list. They said from the beginning they were not staying in a sanctioned hotel. They were staying. In fact, they got kind of roasted for the fact that they stayed in a 5-star hotel. Now, in fairness to them, they said that was because they could only stay at a select few places because they were complying with the sanctions. At least that's what they said at the time. Now, it's possible they lied and secretly stayed at a sanctioned hotel. And I guess these subpoenas could discover that if they got more information, but I'm really not going to assume that that's the case because it wouldn't make much sense, right? It would be pretty foolish and self-defeating. And until there's evidence that they stayed at a hotel they're not allowed to stay at, I'm not really going to assume otherwise. And that brings us to another weird piece of this, which is that Fox News reported that Hasan and the Code Pink lady, Mazia Benjamin or whatever, had been subpoenaed, like served with subpoenas. Yet they both came out and said, we haven't. Even others have since confirmed that they still have not been subpoenaed, which is just weird. It's like, I'm not sure why they would deny that if they had been, right? There's nothing to be gained by denying having received a subpoena. So if they are telling the truth, then it sounds like Fox maybe got a tip off from inside the administration about something that was going to happen, but published it before it actually happened? I don't know, but it's a very bizarre situation where multiple assertions in this Fox News bombshell that's just been repeated over and over and discussed just don't seem to be true, or at least are being denied. So make of that what you will. Now, part of the problem I have with this situation is that, listen, I don't believe streamers are above the law, but at the end of the day, so if somebody violates the law, they should be held accountable, but it shouldn't be done based on how you feel about that person otherwise, based on politics or based on ideology or popularity or animus or anything. It should be neutral, right? That's why we have the statues of Lady Justice and she's wearing a blindfold. But it does not necessarily appear that this is the case, because do you know who seemingly did violate U.S. sanctions during his trip to Cuba? That would be the influencer and journalist, more on the conservative side of the spectrum, Nick Shirley, who filmed himself and did a whole series about how he was going to Cuba, and then admitted during an interview with Patrick Bet-David that he stayed at the Hotel Nacional, which, spoiler alert, is on the sanctions list as hotels you are not allowed to stay at. And yet he admitted that he did, because I'm pretty sure it's literally a government-owned hotel. Here is Nick Shirley on the PBD podcast.
Did you go to the hotel that Meyer Lansky built in Havana?
I don't know. I was at the Hotel Nacional.
Hotel Nacional. Is
Probably
that like the main hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that it? No, that's a different property.
That's the capital.
That's the capital. How easy was it for you to change the flight and come back early? Was that pretty smooth and easy?
It was pretty smooth, but we didn't want to let them know and tip them off that we were leaving early. So I think we booked the flight at like 3 a.m., but it didn't help because when we went down to leave the hotel, the 2-star general was waiting for us. And so we went out to go get the taxi, and then the security guard comes. He's like, hey, don't run. They're here. They want to talk to you.
So will Nick Shirley be receiving a subpoena for more information about his travel and financial records? I would expect so, right? If this is actually about the sanctions, if this is actually about a neutral enforcement of the law. I guess I don't know for sure if Nick Shirley stayed at the Hotel Nacional, but he seemed to say so on this podcast openly, and it's listed. I'll show you the State Department website. Cuba prohibited accommodations list, Hotel Nacional de Cuba. There's only one hotel named that. It's like, maybe there's some reason, or maybe he did comply with the sanctions, or maybe it wasn't him, maybe it was something else. Like, I'm not saying, I don't really care one way or another whether he stayed at this hotel or didn't. But what I can say is that the law is not supposed to be a vehicle for partisan ambitions or justice or retribution, rather. And unfortunately, it has been made so in the past. And then I think Trump has taken that and then some and really went after his political enemies. But if you were to have a situation where they tried to go after Hasan Piker over this, or Ryan Grimm, or any of these left-wing, or Medea Benjamin, or any of these left-wing activists, but not Nick Shirley, then you have a partisan, political, weaponized Department of Justice. Full stop, unambiguously so. And so I think you got to call for, at minimum, some consistency here and some integrity. So I don't, once again, I don't want Nick Shirley for prison. I don't care. I don't have any animus towards him. I'm just pointing out a seeming inconsistency here. You know what I'm saying? Now, one final point I want to make about this is that perhaps Hasan Piker may now finally learn the importance of classical liberalism, of impartial equality under the law, of free speech, and of all these things he has been so openly disdainful towards in the past. I want to show you a clip of Hasan Piker cheering at the prospect of a politician he doesn't like, Democratic Senator Adam Schiff, who he doesn't think is progressive enough or leftist enough, potentially being politically persecuted by the Trump administration. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but regardless, Hasan seemed to think it was, and he was celebrating that just a matter of months ago. Let's watch that clip.
And now part of that is...
Oh my God. Senator Adam under federal criminal investigation for alleged mortgage fraud violations. Oh my God, I hope they arrest him. Oh my God, I hope he goes to prison. Oh my God, I hope he goes to prison. Oh, I hate him so much. Oh yeah. Oh hell yeah. Yeah, this is political. Sure, I don't care. Lock him up. Lock him up. He got...
Oh.
Dude, he literally got... I know this is absolutely malicious. I know this is malicious. I know Trump is doing this out of pure malice. This got like $6 million from AIPAC. Okay? Lock him up. Yes, he's my senator.
Funny how when it was people he doesn't like, Hasan is cheering on the prospect of a political prosecution or crackdown, but suddenly now that he may be potentially being targeted, he is singing a different tune. It's almost like you should support these things consistently because the shoe may, in fact, end up on the other foot at some point in time. Crazy take. I know I'm just a weirdo radical, not like the very stable and normal Hasan Piker, of course. But just because he's cheered for this kind of thing in the past, some people are saying, well, let him get the lie in the bed that he made. It's like, no, it's still wrong. I still don't support it if that's what's happening here. And finally, I will say, like, who knows? Maybe they do dig up some connection, but I am not seeing it. Having extensively read about and researched this so far, any actual proof that he violated U.S. sanctions. He's allowed to go there. He does, and whether you like his content or not, whether you think it's wildly biased or not, the U.S. government doesn't get to make that distinction. He did go there on the journalism general license, and his content does meet the metrics for that. Have nothing to do about, oh, is your coverage friendly to the Cuban regime or not? That's not illegal. Sorry, it's not. And his coverage was mostly focused on opposing U.S. policy toward Cuba. So I'm sorry, whether you think it's insane, whether you totally disagree with it or not, what he did is some form of journalism. Might not be good journalism, might not be sane journalism, but the U.S. government doesn't get to decide what journalism is allowed to be protected and what isn't. And so absent some sort of evidence that he engaged in some sort of sanctions violation that has not been outlined yet, because the hotel thing appears to not be true. They did deliver aid, but that's also allowed. And they interviewed government officials in Cuba, but that's allowed. So there is no there as of now. And yet, and I do find this strange, but not particularly surprising at this point. Lots of like right-wing media or conservative commentator types just loved the idea of Hasan Piker for prison, I guess. And listen, I am like a member of the anti-Hasan Piker club, but I'm not a member of the locking up or trying to persecute your political opponents club. And I don't believe in the concept of find me the man and I'll show you the crime, or whatever the saying is, right? Like, we're going to be able to find something on this guy. We'll just dig something up to jam him up. He doesn't seem to have done anything illegal. And it's obvious that this crackdown is political, at least somewhat in nature. And I'm going to have an issue with that. And I'm going to defend people's rights to not be targeted by the government for their beliefs, whether that person is a crazy leftist, a far-right extremist, or a sane and delightful person like yours truly. That's just my take. And I will let you guys decide for yourself what you think. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Do make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet. Hit the like button, and we will be back with more. And maybe some updates on Hasan down the road. Who knows? He's always good at getting into drama. But that'll be it for today. We'll talk again real soon.